Welcome, everyone, to another Juran Global podcast. Once again, Chairman of the Juran, Joe DeFeo, Dr. Joe DeFeo, will be working us through another stage of our series on building a culture of excellence. As you can see, this is part 6, and we're focusing on the enablers. During this presentation, Joe will pause if there are some questions, if it's appropriate in the flow of things. If you do put questions out there, I'll be looking for them as well. And if we don't get to them during the flow of the presentation, we'll try to answer them before we sign off. This is a recorded webinar, and it'll be available to you and your colleagues, which you're free to share. We welcome any feedback that you want to give Joe on this and any other Juran matter. So it's my pleasure now to turn this over to Dr. Joe DeFeo.
Thank you, Dr. Juran, and welcome everyone. I noticed that about half the participants are outside the United States. So either you're working really late or really early, depending where you are. So thank you for tuning in. And for those of you who are either taking your lunch period or afternoon snoozes, thanks for signing up and coming in. Some of you have been here for all 6 parts. Some of you have not. If you are just tuning in today, I encourage you to go back and see what you've missed. And if this is your 6th piece, I hope you all come back for the 7th piece in a few weeks. As you know, we've been building a culture of excellence piece by piece. And in this 6th piece, we're going to continue to do that. Prior to today's session, the 5 sessions have covered various elements of building a culture of excellence within an organization. And one of the things I'd like you to think about is your organization probably has a lot of initiatives going on. And this series is not supposed to say, hey, abandon everything and start from scratch. What this is about is trying to give you a picture of how you can look at all the initiatives you have within the organization and match them up to the framework to see if indeed you're covering all the right pieces. Many people have a lot of training going on. A lot of people have Six Sigma or Lean. Some people have Agile and Scrum. They have all these things going on, but they don't know how they all fit together. So one of the outcomes of this is to give you a picture of how things can fit together. Prior to today, we've broken this series down into an introduction in April, followed by focus on what kind of benefits and results and how you could think about benefits and results. We also then discussed the Juran version of building a house of excellence or a house of quality. There are many versions out there, the Toyota version, the Shingo version, the Baldrige version. We try to take a plain vanilla look at that and say, here's the kind of a pragmatic way to view it. So we have the Juran model and the framework, and then breaking the framework apart into the foundation and the enablers, which then would complete our house of quality. And the last one is going to be about the roadmap. How do you go from here to there? Or depending on where you are, where do you go to next? If you read anything about the enablers here, it's not always clear what we mean by that. But these are the areas that your organization should rethink if you're not focused on voice of the customer or bringing the voice of the customer into the organization, because the whole point of excellence is to be excellent, not just to yourself and your shareholders, but to be excellent for your customers, who then in turn use, buy, purchase, support your goods and services, and that makes you a successful company. So today's session, we're going to look deeper into the enablers. First, I always like to start off with some form of a definition, and you may have your own, but I found this one that I can't claim for myself. But a business enabler is someone or something to identify, instigate opportunities for business improvement that adds value to the business by putting the customer at the center of all their decisions. So in other words, when we talk about enablers, they're enablers that drive customer experience, customer satisfaction. Currently, you may be using these enablers not to do that. You may have these enablers in place, such as our product development process, or our quality control, quality assurance, quality management system process. These things are in place to make sure you get results. The whole value of building a culture of excellence is that your results can come faster, better, cheaper if you do some different things. Focus on superior products, which drive sales. And today we're going to talk about one of the enablers of superior products, and that is the innovation and design process. Without it, your superior products may not be so superior. Another piece of that is you need to have great processes to deliver superior products. Well, how great are your processes? And how great is the data you get to drive your processes? Do you have a good continuous improvement or breakthrough improvement program to drive that? The third part of that is, are you focused enough on the satisfaction and dissatisfaction that goes along with your customer experience? And how can we engage the workforce to drive that? If you are focused on these results of great products, processes, and customer and get them right, you'll get these sustained results. Now, in the last session, we talked about you better have a strategy for being the best, and you better have a good set of supportive infrastructure, the right methods, tools, and metrics. Today, we're going after that middle piece. How do we make sure we have the right things in place that can drive our results? And if you understand how these enablers enable you and what you have to do differently, you'd be on your way to having a better, more excellent organization. So let's take a look at them. There's two groups here. For those of you who are savvy in the Juran system, you're looking on the Enterprise Quality Management System, Innovation, Design, and Breakthrough Improvement as another way to look at the trilogy, that we must first design quality into our products and services, and then with our quality management system, maintain and control what was designed, and continuously then improving it. Those are the way that we create products, control products, and continuously improve products. It's the way we design processes, control processes, and improve processes. It's also the way that we plan internal products and processes so that we can do our daily work and we can continuously improve them. They don't happen without the right side of this picture. They don't happen without employee participation. And when I use the word employee or workforce, I mean from the CEO right on down. You might call them associates, partners, but if you don't engage the proper people in the design, you might get a less robust design. If you don't have an enterprise quality management system, you may be impacting negatively the customer experience in those areas that may not be product or service related. And if you're trying to get, accountability of a workforce and you don't give them methodology and training and skills, how can you hold them accountable? So we're focused now on this piece here, and I'm going to take it piece by piece. So let's talk about innovation and design. Most manufacturers and production companies have hard goods, and therefore they tend to have a product development process. Many service-related organizations like a hospital, healthcare, financial services may not have such a structured product development process. They may have a marketing focus on designing new services, but it may not be as diligent as a manufacturing one does. But in any case, my point here is there's some aspect of product, service, and process development in every organization. Depending on how mature you are with the methods you're using, you could have a very successful, detailed gate review process that encourages collaboration, participation from multiple functions to develop great products and services, and also incorporate the voice of the customer in there. If some of you have worked in the Six Sigma world, you may have adapted Design for Six Sigma. Design for Six Sigma is a methodology to improve the design of products and services. That current innovation and design process may be great or it may be lacking. When it tends to be lacking, it usually is lacking in a better understanding of how to incorporate the voice of the customers in the design. Uh, Back in the 80s and 90s, when we started to really understand voice of the customer, organizations were finding that I could improve my designs that customers then would like as it turns into a product or service much greater than before, because we truly understand what it was they wanted, what it was they needed, and we were able to then collaborate earlier in the design process to really create innovative designs. And we don't make a distinction between innovation and design for quality or quality by design. It's all about creating new products, new services that meet both the customers and the stakeholders. So great innovation and design process includes methodologies and tools that incorporate and collaborate with customers, suppliers, internal stakeholders, which we can call internal customers and suppliers, in the design early on so we get a better output. Once we get that better output, we can always use our continuous improvement process or a breakthrough improvement process to continuously drive improvements in that design. I'll get back to that in a second. Most of us create new products and services, and the design process does not include process design. A great customer or quality by design program doesn't just develop a new product or service, it actually thinks about process capability in the organization. Can we deliver this new design in the organization we have? If not, we need to drive improvement of our key processes so that we can produce and deliver that product. Most breakthrough improvement and continuous improvement programs really serve two purposes. One is they can improve the processes by which we're going to have new products and services come down the pipe, or they can continuously improve to make them faster, better, cheaper, just as a continuous improvement initiative itself. Design is different from improvement. Improvement is different from design. It's got different purposes, it's got different methodologies, and it shares some of the same tools. The third aspect of the trilogy and the third enabler is your traditional quality control, quality assurance, and supplier quality system. Now we're using a different term here. We're using enterprise quality management system to connote the difference between little q and big Q. So if you're in a production environment, a manufacturing or goods company, you're all very comfortable with quality control, quality assurance to make sure the raw material coming from suppliers is adequate, that we have the right suppliers, that we have the right capabilities to take the raw materials and turn it into new products and services, and voila, we get a product for our customer. The problem with the traditional quality control and quality assurance system, it's that it's been limited to, and even becoming more restrictive, from the incoming raw material to the outgoing product, and tends to include enough supplier assurance, non-product assurance, like how well customer service is performing, how well our invoicing is going to customers, how well our call center is working. So when I use the word enterprise, it means the expansion of the function beyond production or beyond service delivery, if you're a hospital, into all aspects that are critical to the customer and critical to the customer experience. Traditionally, we have quality control and quality assurance, but our line of sight is limited. So the way to think about this is if you followed the customer from the decision to purchase your product to the actual purchase and then ongoing use of it and all the interactions that you have with it, and put in place what's critical to quality and where and how we control that, you'll have a better understanding of what we mean by enterprise quality management system. So if you're a practitioner of ISO 9000 or something similar to it, it doesn't take much to figure out that They're really not concerned about the financial management system, the HR system, the customer service system, unless you've included it in your scope. And that's the problem. Many people do not include those non-traditional areas in your scope, which are becoming more and more important to the customer experience, and hence more important to our generating results. So on the enablers, in terms of the trilogy, we want to make sure that your organization truly has an improved innovation and design process utilizing better methods of gate review, better understanding of voice of the customer, better understanding of really what the actual customer needs are. Some of these methods, we call it quality by design. There's design for Six Sigma. There's DMEDI, which is another version of design for Six Sigma. There's Agile and Scrum. These are all methods to help us be better, faster at innovation and design. Many of you know there's Lean, Six Sigma, root cause analysis, PDCA, PDSA, all forms of improvement and continuous improvement, whether using Kaizen, project teams, Six Sigma teams, it's all about improvement. And then, of course, the multiple quality management systems that are out there depending on your industry, like ISO 9000 or QS 9000 or whatever it may be. Most organizations focus on breakthrough improvement, and although they're not doing it 100% right, they're doing it a lot better than their innovation and design, and they're expanding their thought process beyond production. Now, if you're an organization that feels very confident that the enablers in place, then you probably also feel pretty confident that you have employee engagement at the right level. And so let me talk a little bit about the other side of the enablers here. We want employee engagement, at least leaders want it, because they feel that if you get employees engaged, they'll be accountable. And being accountable, I can hold you responsible. Well, unfortunately, if you look at our work processes and realize that the average individual, wherever you are in the organization, only has so much control over the process, only so much control over the suppliers to that process and customers of that process. So if you really want me to be accountable, you have to provide me or give me responsibility to be accountable, meaning I need to know what is expected of me, what are the goals of my process. You have to let them know how well I'm doing on a regular basis, and then give them the ability to change or improve the process. Many leaders believe they give the goals and the metrics to monitor the goals, but rarely do they give the individual responsibility to make changes. And therefore, they can't be held accountable, because if I can't adjust my process, how are you going to hold me accountable? Accountability comes through the active involvement of employees in innovation and design projects, in continuous improvement projects, in the quality system. The more opportunities to work together, the more clear my elements of control become, that I know what the goal is. I know the process capability. I know how to adjust it. And how did I get that knowledge? Well, someone provided me some education on the means to do that. And so if you have a talent and skill development in HR and it's not supporting your employee engagement, and the employees are not engaged in things that really drive accountability, you're never going to get that engaged and accountable workforce. And when I'm talking about engagement, it's not how do I get them in the room, it's how do I keep them engaged throughout. And so we keep people engaged through various daily work and various teams. And so if we think about the left side, the innovation, breakthrough improvement, and quality management, those are things. On this side, it's the people that make those things happen. And if you expect people to know how to do innovation and design without teaching them, you're making a mistake. If you feel that we can just throw people in a room and engage with them and they'll do great designs, probably not so much. So we need to keep both sides of this equation clear, that one enables the other and one without the other is not an enabler. Now, here's the reason why. Here's our organization. made up of various departments. We have the orange department, the blue one, the light purple, and the green. Each one of them report to the CEO or the plant manager or the office manager or the hospital president. And each of us are responsible for our own well-being in our group. And the farther you go down, the more complex the process works. And really, the product, service, or delivery of customer experience moves from left to right. It's a combination of everybody doing a little piece by piece, department by department, function by function, until we actually deliver the product to the customer. Now, these systems have been designed to manage people very effectively, but they tend not to look end to end at how well the collection of our design, our control, and our continuous improvement along these processes works to be able to deliver to the customer what they want and to deliver to the stakeholders what we want. We use various forms of teams. We have departmental or daily work teams, which are really good at focusing within our organization, within our department, to make sure we do the right thing. And that is one way to get engagement and accountability. But we can't lose sight of multifunctional teams, which are required to look across our departments. So we want engagement. We put them into a team, but the type of team we put them into can also have drastically different impact on the company. Multifunctional teams, because they look end to end, because they go across many functions, tend to be much bigger in scope, more in complexity, but greater in results. The functional teams that focus individually on their areas can improve within, but they don't control the outputs as inputs to the next department. And one of the most useful activities in a culture of excellence is when each of our departments truly understand we have internal customers and external customers. We have internal suppliers and external suppliers. Whether you're R&D, product development, or a production house, you have customers and suppliers. And we need to understand how to make sure that we create products and services that flow efficiently and effectively through that organization. And as we deploy our house of quality, meaning we have made a strategic choice to be the best, and we've then created this infrastructure, which are councils and steering teams and governance, and bring in the Lean and Six Sigma and RCA and the Agile and Scrum methods, and teach you 5 Whys and teach you Pareto and teach you how to work as a team, creating better metrics and scorecards, and aim all that stuff at innovation and design, breakthrough improvement, a better quality management system, and at the same time improving your engagement, you will begin to see the outcomes. And there's no surprise that if you don't get the products right, if you don't then make the processes efficient, it's very hard to get a great customer experience, because either the product or service is breaking down or the process by which they deliver them to is breaking down. So you have to move in that order, meaning apply your breakthrough improvement to the things that negatively impact the customer. Apply then to the process. When you try to apply to the people before you apply product and process, you're probably going to get a lot of resistance to change, and that is a problem. As you complete your foundation and you start focusing on these enablers, the results will come over time. But if you don't, and I'm going to walk back here, if you don't think of it this way, that we got to add better clarity of voice of the customer and stakeholders so we can understand what we're missing in our designs. If we don't drive process optimization, and I want to talk about department teams versus multifunctional teams. Sub-optimization is deadly in an organization, meaning I do what's important to my department at the expense of another one. Unless you have multifunctional governance and multifunctional teams, you're not going to avoid suboptimization. So to avoid it, look both ways. You're not going to maintain the gains of any good design or any good continuous improvement unless you have a solid, more robust quality management system. Years ago, many suppliers were actually departments in the organization you work for. And over time, you outsource them. Well, as you outsource them, we made the assumption that they're going to have their own quality system in place. And so we stopped supplier quality. We stopped incoming inspection. Well, that's not a good process anymore because most of your products are now supplied to you from someone else. And we still have to have the assurance that the stuff coming in is good. So you may have to relook at your supplier quality system. You may have to expand your thought process on where your quality control system is. And at the same time, don't forget about engaging in these employees in terms of how we make them accountable. I'm going to pause for a second, Dave, and allow you to give me those questions you have in front of you.
Well, Joe, I don't see them, but I do have a question. I'm looking particularly at the importance of having the customer's ongoing sense of what's going on with them in the eyes and ears of the employee group. And I'm wondering, how can you get that awareness of customer built into this engagement aspect so that when they're thinking for the customer, not just for themselves or their particular skill area?
Well, if we think about, use my arrow here. If my department is here and I'm sitting in this spot right here, how do I know who the customer is out here? The only
Right.
way I'm going to know is if we have a mechanism that allows us to see customer satisfaction data, customer experience data, and present it to us. But more importantly, it tends to go this way. There's scorecards up here that all relate to the top scorecard. And then we
Mm-hmm.
deploy these scorecards. Likewise, we deploy processes and work instructions that allow us to work together. So what has to happen is you have to engage these functional teams with other functional teams so that you understand that we do have customers. It's an orientation and it's an education and communication. Many leaders want to know what they can do to support an excellence organization. One is to talk more about who the customers are. What are
Yes.
their needs? What are they doing? Don't talk about the markets, talk about the customer. And that helps articulate what it is, who they are, where they are. A hospital is nice because the patient comes to the hospital. The
Mm.
patient is there. But the patient's not the only customer. The doctors also come to a hospital to work. The surgeons come to a hospital to work. And yes, the patient is the ultimate customer, but a surgeon coming into my hospital to work from an outside group wants to make sure that his or her services are there so they can provide great patients. So this interaction and understanding has to be learned and taught. And that's why it's the foundational element that without belief that customers are important, we tend to overlook the importance of these functional teams and we just worry about ourselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's definitely the most prominent trend that I've seen in following your Juran work for decades now. This focus on the customer has always been there, but now you're saying for excellence, and without it, there's no excellence, even if the money looks good and other measures. So this focus on enterprise quality management system with engaged employees is all about bringing the customer's experience into every design and every delivery decision.
Yeah, and historically, I learned the Juran way of thinking about customers prior to coming to Juran that customers are a cast of characters. They're different type of customers. And if we lump them all together in the word customer, we
Mm.
never really understand who's driving the business and who isn't. So, for instance, many product recalls, many customer complaints, many product, I should say, lost sales because customers didn't like the product or service. They
Hmm.
tend to come from not really understanding who the customer is in terms of that cast of characters. So, for instance, if we're designing an automobile and we don't think about the insurance companies as a customer, then the insurance company may decide to, it can impact the sale of our car by having too much of a premium because we don't meet safety requirements,
Hmm.
or we didn't meet the regulatory requirements in time, and so they didn't give you a good lower rating, and therefore now the insurance is too much money for someone to buy your product and they don't buy it. Who would think of the insurance company or regulatory agency as a customer? Well, when you think of a customer in that way, you'll try to do everything you can to meet their needs. So in the Juran words, the customers are a cast of character. Some of them are the department next door. Some of them are paying customers. Some of them are users and never pay for the product. So we need to understand who's going to have this great customer experience. Are we going to limit our thought process to the purchaser, the user, the parent of the user? So it's a really important step, and that step is carried out in the innovation and design process. We just don't say we're designing a new product we're designing new cereal because our customers want healthier cereal. What customer? Do you think a kid wants a healthier cereal? No, the parent does, but the parent doesn't have to eat it. So the child has to make sure they like it. So you're designing for one customer, but the other customer is going to be the user. So if you don't look at them both, you'll come out with either something that's really good for the child or really good for the parent, and not good for the child or not good for the parent. The best product is one that meets both requirements.
One more moment here. Lynn Nicholson has asked, is cost optimization the same as focus on customer satisfaction?
Well, interesting. I had a discussion yesterday about cost. Cost is part of, and if you look at optimal cost here, obviously sales and cost make, profitability in a company. And we chose the word optimal cost to be able to say, if you could produce a product or service in the most optimal way, you'd have the least amount of cost of poor quality, but the most economic level of performance. In other words, we don't want to say, zero failures, zero cost, because it's an impossibility.
Hmm.
Optimal says that we want to make sure that we can balance the economics of what we can afford to do and give the customer what they want at the same time. Now, is there a difference between cost and cost reduction? Yes. Everything costs money. Everything in the organization costs. But some of those costs are value added, some are not value added. When we go on a cost reduction campaign, we need to keep in mind we're trying to focus on the non-value added costs. And unfortunately, many organizations don't separate the difference between the non-value added and the value added, and they lump them all together. So costs as it relates to customer must be driven out by getting rid of those things that negatively impact the customer
Right.
first. Once you've gotten rid of the things that negatively impact the customer, there's a tendency for your processes to be cheaper, your product to be cheaper. Now the question becomes, how much cheaper do we want to be? Do we want to now start removing some of the features of our product that give us customer experience, which is more cost reduction? Or do we want to maintain this optimal level, which says these are the right features for the right price right now? So you can't talk about quality and excellence without cost, but we want you to make sure you talk about cost as a necessary and an unnecessary evil. The unnecessary is all that excess cost of poor quality, the cost of not doing anything to reduce it in the organization. And it's very important that, Dr. Juran was, one of the first to kind of make quality look more managerial. And in order
Hmm.
to do that, he said there's only one reason to improve quality. It's either to drive sales or reduce cost. But you don't do it haphazardly. You do it by understanding the customer requirements and the customer needs. because if we want to increase sales, we better know what satisfies them. If we want to decrease costs, we better know what dissatisfies them. And that's where the whole point of this all starts. The whole loyalty of customers came into play a little bit later. That says if you increase sale, if you're working to increase sales by focusing on the customer, if you're decreasing costs by getting rid of waste, you will develop loyal customers because they're getting a cheaper, better product from a cheaper, better company. And that's a good thing.
Yep.
So
Do you want to
go
keep
ahead.
going, or do you want to look at any more questions at this point, Joe?
If
Got a
there's
couple
another
more.
question, I'll take it.
Yep. Peggy Bradley asks, are there respective barriers to prepare for in relation to the enablers? What might get in the way of setting these up or getting them moving along in a better fashion?
I'll give you a couple tidbits here, then I'll also tell you that's really part of the next episode, the next session we're doing, which is the roadmap, because the roadmap carries with it some obstacles. For instance, here's an obstacle. We want to have better, more innovative, creative products, quality by design. Unfortunately, my company has a rigid gate review process that they believe is working just fine, and that the DMADV or DFSS or quality by design steps look like they're another form of gate review. And so the department owners feel that I know what I'm doing. Do not bring that into my organization, even though it's the right thing to do. So in product development, the obstacle is getting them to accept that product development is no longer a functional activity. It is a multifunctional activity. No longer is it just the engineering part of a business. It's the sales, marketing, quality, operations as well. So one obstacle in product development is to get those folks on board. Obviously, the breakthrough and continuous improvement, most of us have dealt with the resistance, but the resistance there is getting people to find the time to analyze and improve process and then make changes. And so there are ways to deal with that. And then on the enterprise quality management system, the quality departments may not be capable of thinking enterprise wide. And so the very people we want to expand the function on may not be able to do it because they've never worked in those areas. So there's ways to overcome that. On the engagement of people side, not every employee wants to be engaged happily in a team activity or department activity. So you'll have to respect some employees' participation levels aren't going to be as great as others, but that's okay initially. Over time, they tend to come on board. So those are some of the things that I will tease out. I'll give you one more, the talent and skill development. So many organizations have training platforms and big training curriculums, and they force people to go into training, but they can't tie it to specific results because they can't tie it to specific behaviors they want to change.
Yep.
We're linking the talent and skill development here to make sure that if you want breakthrough improvement, teach employees how to do breakthrough improvement. If you want better quality, teach them how to do better quality. If you want them to be engaged, teach them how to work on a team. In other words, don't just teach them the stuff and say, by the way, someday you'll work in it. Tie them really tightly together. And so the difficulty is abandoning some of the lousy workshops you have and aligning the more important ones to the business. And with that, I will tease out the next session.
Okay.
If you were a company doing your own startup today, or if you were doing a greenfield operation, or if you were saying, I want to transform my company, where do I start? Well, if you look at the decide, prepare line item I have here, those are roadmap steps. And wouldn't you know it, there we go. You need to have some, change management steps, transformational steps, and we simply settled on a long time ago. Decide what the organization wants to do, prepare for it, launch whatever it is, expand it, and sustain it. and in itself is just a guide to move from here to there. But when we Juranize it a bit, we realize that you can't get from here to there unless the organization passes through these breakthroughs. And the breakthroughs we're talking about are organizational breakthroughs. For instance, we work to make a decision on what to do. The activities we engage in, external benchmarking, assessing our capabilities, understanding our customers, looking at our options to make changes. Those decisions create a breakthrough in leadership that allows us to prepare. And so, how do we get that decision made, and how do we achieve that breakthrough? Once we've achieved the breakthrough in leadership and management are willing to do something different, we begin to prepare. We put in the structures, the steering teams, the councils, the training, the education. Once we have completed our preparation, now we have created the means for an organizational structural breakthrough, meaning leadership wants us to do it, and leadership is now providing the means to do it. Let's go. Well, launch says, let's do that. Let's improve innovation. Let's improve continuous improvement. Let's improve control. Let's get the engagement. But what are we getting it on? We're looking at our current performance and improving from there. We're looking at products, processes, and services. And as we launch our improvements day by day, week by week, month by month, we start to see with every improvement, our current performance improving. That doesn't mean our culture is improving until we expand, and can expand. But a culture will not change unless it sees some wins. Hence, the launch phase is to get quick wins, new wins, and to feed on itself so that we can expand. We can't expand unless we've seen some current performance breakthroughs. That's why we do pilot projects. That's why we do projects. And once we get our lessons learned from that, we adjust our programs and we expand. And the more we expand, the more people we impact, the more part of the enterprise we impact, the greater chance the culture begins to change. As the culture begins to change and realizes that we can't expand forever, we have to sustain, we have to be able to know how to sustain. And sustainability is about adaptability, creating mechanisms that allow us to constantly look at the customer requirements, constantly looking at those things that enable us to get through here. So when we talk about a roadmap, it's not just the roadmap, it's the organizational breakthroughs that happen that enable us to move through the roadmap. I'll bet if I could do a show of hands, how many of you are in an organization that has an initiative that the first time you heard of the initiative was when someone told you to go to the training workshop? And you show up at the training workshop and they start telling you that you need leadership support, leadership participation. And you're like, my leader ain't here. I don't know what they're talking about. Well, that's like trying to launch before you've gotten those breakthroughs. What problems do you encounter? People complaining, the instructor gets beat up, the stakeholder who promoted this training eventually gets beat up, and worse, the organization abandons a really good method because they said it didn't work. No, you didn't make it work properly in the context of this. So in the next webinar, we are going to complete the roadmap for how to go from here to there. I hope you join us, and I hope for those of you who have been joining us and like a certificate of completion, you have to send me an email. Be nice about it, and we will be happy to send that. The only requirement is that you have been through all the sessions, and so you'll have to prove to me but you were at all the sessions, which we do keep a roster. For those of you who want to come to the next one, it's on Wednesday, September 25th. It will cover the roadmap. And with that, I'd like to thank Dr. Juran and all of you for your time, and I hope to see you again in September. And then we'll be starting up a whole new series on another topic. Stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And thank you, everyone. And be sure to reach out to Joe if you have further questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to them all, but he's very quick at interacting and getting back to you. So we'll see you in September.